Good morning and welcome to Morning Movie News, where I'm sure you've noticed this week all of the entertainment headlines have been dominated by television and also social media. And that's because the TV upfronts are in full swing. Now, this used to be just when the networks would present to advertisers to sell their upcoming fall slate. They want advertisers to get excited and to buy ad space on said shows. But as the lines have blurred in entertainment, there are empires, not just in television. For instance, NBC's upfront also includes like Bravo, for instance, right? And then when Fox does an upfront, they're talking about FX and FXX. But of course, movies are all part of the same companies as well. So we have some movie news that's come in particular from ABC, which of course is part of the Disney empire. All right, so the first two stories come out of the upfronts, and the very first one is that they announced that Jimmy Kimmel will return to host the Oscars in 2018. And it's going to be a big show because it's the 90th anniversary, so they're certainly going to try and get a lot of mileage out of that. But first of all, the news never trended. Neither of these ABC stories trended, which should cause some concern. I mean, like Young Sheldon today trended immediately for CBS's upfront. So the fact that neither Jimmy Kimmel Oscars 2018 and, as you're going to see, Little Mermaid Live trended even momentarily is troubling. So anyway, Jimmy Kimmel, why on earth would he be brought back to host the Oscars? Because the one that he did last year, or actually earlier this year, had the second lowest ratings in the history of the telecast. Now, some people say it's the movie's fault, right? People just weren't excited about the movies. And that is a genuine problem for the Oscars. They tried to fix it by widening the Best Picture race by having more potential nominees after The Dark Knight was shut out, but it has only had more of the same nominated for Best Picture. They still really can't get a blockbuster in there. The biggest years for Oscar coverage have been like when Avatar was nominated. That was a great year because of also Inglourious Bastards, The Hurt Locker. And then, when Black Swan was up, everybody really cared. In the past, people have cared, but it's been rough the past couple of years. But anyway, Cheryl Boone Isaacs, who of course heads the Academy these days, said she wanted to make sure people remember that the Academy Awards, even at their lowest, are still the highest rated non-sports live show. That's a lot of qualifiers, Cheryl. And the other thing she neglects to bring up is that because of said low ratings, when ABC recently renegotiated their deal with the Academy to air the Oscars, they were able to demand creative input because they're currently operating at a loss because it's such an expensive show to put on, and the ad dollars simply are not there because of the lesser eyeballs. But so far, ABC's creative seat at the table isn't leading to more viewership, but at least ABC is benefiting in that they're advertising their late night lineup, which is anchored by Jimmy Kimmel. That's the whole reason he's hosting. And as long as he is the head of their late night show, he will probably continue to host the Oscars. They said, he's the first person since Billy Crystal to host twice in a row. And I'm like, he's going to break that record in 2019 when he hosts again, because ABC just really wants that high profile gig for their own guy. I think that there are so many better choices that could host. I think in the past, Seth MacFarlane, I liked the job that he did as host. I thought his flight socks in the dryer was absolutely hysterical. And I mean, he was an acquired taste and he offended a lot of people, but I thought that what he said was true. So, the topless women song that he did, I mean, he did see everything that he sang about. And then, of course, Ellen has been, I think, the most successful recent Oscar host. She really did a fabulous job and really knew how to capture, the social media. She was only recently unseated as the most retweeted tweet of all time by the Wendy Nuggets guy. You gotta love the internet. All right, so anyway, I think Louis C.K. would be a better choice. As I've said before, I thought when he presented recently, he did a fabulous job, very funny. I would also love to see Aziz Ansari, who's having a real career high right now. He came off of a fabulous monologue himself on SNL recently, as is Louis C.K. And Master of None, which I'm currently watching, is so clever and smart and light and breezy. I think he would be a really fabulous host. And it's sad to see the Oscars, which is supposed to celebrate film, be used as a way to advertise an entirely different medium. It's like what's happened to the Grammys on CBS. Like, I stopped watching the Grammys when they were like, and next up to present the lead actors on NCIS. And I was like, what does this, we've gotten so far away from music, I'm just watching a CBS ad. But anyway, if they really want to promote network talent, I'd love to see Fresh Off the Boat's Randall Park get the gig. I think he's very funny. He doesn't get enough opportunity. And there's been a lot of talk recently about Asian representation in entertainment, period, particularly after Chris Rock's unfortunate accountant's joke from 2 years ago. So I don't think this is a great idea. Also, the other thing they mentioned was they were like, oh, are you going to make up for Moonlight, what happened with the snafu at the end of this year's telecast where they accidentally said that La La Land had won Best Picture? And it's like, how would you do that? And they're like, maybe we'll have them come out at the beginning of the show to get the round of applause and attention they deserve. That sounds so horrible that I hope that the Moonlight people have the good sense to say, no, thank you. All right. Maybe they'll get a nice round of applause if they present something, right? I mean, I just think that move on. All right. And I think also, by the way, I think part of the reason they're bringing back Jimmy Kimmel is also to make it look like it's not repercussions after what happened with that snafu again. Although nobody blames Jimmy Kimmel. It's obviously the accountant's fault. All right. So that's the first story of the day. Now, the second story of the day is that ABC announced that they want to get into the live musical game, which is doing so well on television. Well, it has its ups and downs, but it has the potential to do so well, every network wants in. And there have been a lot of announcements during the TV upfronts for live musicals that are going to be done throughout the year. And ABC said, oh yeah, well, we've got The Little Mermaid. And it's like, really? Aren't you developing that as a live-action fairy tale with Lin-Manuel Miranda heavily involved in the music, like writing new songs and such? And I guess the fact that they're willing to put it on TV means that live-action fairy tale movie is very far away. That they're like, you know what? People probably have forgotten. This is just going to keep The Little Mermaid on people's radar at the rate that we're going. We're focused on Guy Ritchie not torpedoing Aladdin, and that Mulan succeeds even though for some reason it's not a musical. I hope that they have changed that. By the way, on a side note, the best live-action musical presentation I've ever seen was actually over on Fox with Grease. It was just so incredibly well done. And it was just not only well done as a production, but it was so good at, realizing it was a live telecast and addressing that and capitalizing on that. It just really the best live viewing experience I've ever had watching television. I was really, really impressed. And the director duo for that, by the way, have moved on to movies. So good for them. But anyway, this isn't going to you might be like, well, how are they going to do everybody underwater? Well, it's going to be an animated live mix where it's going to be The Wonderful World of Disney, The Little Mermaid live, and they're basically going to show the animated movie and then occasionally cut away during the musical numbers. You'll be like, oh, I'm loving watching The Little Mermaid again. What the hell? Why am I going to a stage instead of watching the musical number I know and love? But they're going to cut to a live musical number, and they're going to be like, but there's a celebrity here. And you'll be like, I just want to watch the original. But anyway, this reminds me of the Hollywood Bowl performance that was done, I think last year, where it was basically the same thing, right? I guess maybe it did really well for Disney, and they're like, let's keep going with it. And they had Jodie Benson did like the main performances, the original voice of Little Mermaid, but Sarah Bareilles filled in for her on some of the dates. Rebel Wilson was Ursula. Darren Criss was Prince Eric. John Stamos was Chef Louis. They were like, we need more celebrities. John Stamos is always up for a good time. And then Titus Burgess, he also does a lot of Broadway, but he's also from Kimmy Schmidt. He was Sebastian. I would wonder, though, if Lin-Manuel Miranda would step in here to be Sebastian. His son is named Sebastian. He loves The Little Mermaid that much. But wouldn't that be Latino washing the role? I don't really know if they can do that. They could maybe make him Prince Eric. I don't know what they're going to do with Lin-Manuel Miranda. After the work he did on Moana, I actually don't want him anywhere near The Little Mermaid either. Guy Ritchie, Lin-Manuel Miranda, I'm sure they're very nice, but I think they should go work on their own projects, right? Stay away from the things that are already fine. But we'll see. I wonder if this will build excitement or will dilute excitement. People might be like, yeah, I saw the live Little Mermaid and I didn't love it so much, so you can hold off on the movie. But again, as I said, this news never trended either. It'll probably trend when it airs, and let's see what the celebrity lineup is and how much. I mean, Lin-Manuel Miranda has a very strong presence on social media, and I did really enjoy him on Saturday Night Live. So I think this is not a great idea. I think it downgrades Little Mermaid, which is like Frozen before Frozen came along, and I would just be fast tracking the musical, quite frankly. All right, so the third story of the day, back to Moonlight, is that Barry Jenkins, he's like, don't bring up my Moonlight snafu, because I'm moving on with my career, having just signed a deal with Megan Ellison's Annapurna Pictures, who we recently talked about because she signed a deal also with Brad Pitt to distribute and fund his Plan B movies. So she's building, finally, a pretty nice stable of talent. Although Paul Thomas Anderson and Kathryn Bigelow are probably like, don't come over here, it'll ruin your career. I mean, both of them, ever since they've joined up with Megan Ellison, have not done well. Oh, come to think of it, this is oh yeah, why doesn't anybody ever do their due diligence, right? I mean, Paul Thomas Anderson, The Master, right? Inherent Vice, low points in the man's career. Working with Scott Rudin, There Will Be Blood, phenomenal. Then Kathryn Bigelow comes off The Hurt Locker, first woman and only woman to ever win an Oscar for directing, and then she does Zero Dark 30 and now the upcoming Detroit. Megan Ellison, she's awards poison. I would stay the heck away from her. So poor Barry Jenkins. But I guess this was maybe the only deal on the table. And I'm sure it comes with a lot of money because that's Megan Ellison's trademark move. She just throws money at you. Now his production company is going to be named Pastel, and it's a 2-year deal, and it includes one feature that's being developed, and it's top secret. Although one thing that he is working on that'll probably come first is an Underground Railroad television series for Amazon. Although somebody else is doing an underground television show right now, but I guess, of course, Barry Jenkins would have a higher pedigree. I think it's interesting. I'm going to try and talk about Jordan Peele's HBO deal tomorrow, but I feel that while it's really important that Black talent, tell, Black stories in a way that only they can, from that perspective and trying to make them seem more real and not come across as tokenism, I also feel they don't want to get caught up in like the cliched story, the stories that have become cliche at this point. I think they want to move forward. And also, I think that the best way to get in the door is to tell these types of stories, but you want to eventually get to a place where you can tell any story that you want. That would, I think, be the ideal situation. But I hope that Barry Jenkins, and in many ways, that's exactly what Moonlight was. So I would think that very forward-thinking. Stories that haven't been told before. That was what was so great, but still from the community. That's what was so great about Moonlight. So I almost see an Underground Railroad series as a step backward for him. But, we'll see what happens. All right, so the viewer, it's a little bit like John Ridley with his American Crime Show, which wasn't towards a specific ethnicity, but, I was out for 12 Years a Slave, and that really hasn't materialized for him. And then John Ridley's doing the LA riots, and so I hope that turns out a little bit better. All right, it might be the Hollywood system. These might be the only deals that this talent can get moving forward, which is kind of sad. All right, so anyway, Jude Gross had a really great question for me, and he said, viewer question. How will the Spider-Man Homecoming marketing be done? Will it be by Marvel or Sony? I go to Disney World a lot. Oh, I'm jealous of you, Jude. I love Disney World. And I see buses with Marvel movies on them. Will I see Spider-Man Homecoming and TV spots? Will they get free advertising on the Disney Channel? Thanks in advance. Love the show. 2 thumbs up emojis. Fantastic, Jude. Great question. So always remember, because it is confusing, right? And I'm sure it's confusing for the executives. But when it comes to Spider-Man, Tom Holland's Spider-Man, if it's a solo Spidey movie, it takes place over at Sony. They're in control. But if it's happening in a Marvel movie like Civil War or the Infinity War movies, Marvel makes the decisions. So Sony is running the ad campaign for Spider-Man Homecoming. What YouTube channel is it on? It's on Sony's YouTube channel, right? They're the ones running the spots. I'm sure that Marvel has to approve it, especially because Iron Man is such a big part of the movie, and that's their character. So, and there's tons of Marvel references. So I'm sure that Kevin Feige, as any producer, all producers get to sign off on the ad campaign. Remember Melissa McCarthy complaining about Ghostbusters, saying, I can't do anything about this ad campaign. I'm not a producer. But so Kevin Feige, I'm sure, gets to say, he and his team look at what Sony is doing, but they're of course busy doing their own thing. They've got their own movies to promote. So I'm sure that you'll see Spider-Man advertised in Disney World for Infinity War and the like, and he's also, like, for instance, right now he's a meet and greet at Disney's California Adventure. Remember, they can't do anything in Orlando because of the Universal Studios deal over at Islands of Adventure with their Marvel Land. But when Spidey is at Disney's California Adventure, Disneyland basically, he's there in the context of Civil War, not Spider-Man Homecoming. I mean, it's a solid for Sony that they're like, tomato, tomato. But that's how it's justified, I'm sure, company-wise. So you might see ads running on the Disney Channel. You'll probably see trailers, this is going to come out before any more Marvel movies, but that's all Sony ad buys. And you won't see Spider-Man Homecoming promoted at any of the Disney theme parks, largely because they have, again, their own movies to promote that are coming out at around the same time. They're not going to take valuable ad space at their parks for another studio's film. So that's the rule. So it's weird. I'm not quite sure if this deal was worth it, but I am excited for Spider-Man Homecoming, and I do love me some Tony Stark. So that's my answer to your question, Jude. Great question. You might see it maybe, and again, they might run like a T-shirt or in the Disney parks. You might be walking by like a stand and see a T-shirt and be like, "Grace was wrong." But I think that's just Disney being very shrewd, saying, "Well, we're advertising Spider-Man in general, but since Spider-Man Homecoming is out, maybe you want to buy a Spider-Man t-shirt," but I'm sure it would be in the context of Spider-Man as an Avenger, not Spider-Man has his own adventures for Sony. All right, so that's today's morning movie news. Thank you so much for tuning in. Please write down below what you think of today's top 3 stories. Jude's viewer question: how do you think advertising will and should be handled? And what do you think of just how, as it continues to move along, what do you think of the Sony Marvel deal about Spider-Man? Anything you'd like to see covered tomorrow, let me know about it. And of course, any questions that you might have. Thanks for watching.